Unfiltered. The world doesn't need another expert. It needs you. Prologue. The Noise and the Void. There was a time when truth spoke softly, when wisdom came from lived scars, not polished scripts, when a voice didn't need a title to be trusted, just honesty. But somewhere along the way, we replaced real with right. We traded presence for performance. We started teaching before we had truly lived. Now the world is loud, so loud that silence feels sacred. Everyone's got advice. Everyone's an expert. But very few are alive inside their message. Every scroll tells you how to win, how to heal, how to grow. But have you noticed, the more we consume, the emptier we feel? Because what the world craves isn't more information. It's transformation. And transformation doesn't come from theories. It comes from truth. And truth doesn't wear makeup. Truth limps sometimes. Truth trembles. Truth forgets its lines. But truth moves people. There's a pressure today to look like you've figured it all out before you open your mouth, to hide the bruises, edit the pain, and filter the journey until it gleams. But unfiltered is a rebellion against that. It's the return of what's real. It's the sound of your truth before the world made you doubt it. The world doesn't need another expert with a PowerPoint life. It needs you, in your rawness, in your voice, in your imperfection. Because the people you're meant to touch don't need your perfection. They need your proof. They need to know someone like you walked through fire and still found light. So let your scars become scripts. Let your mistakes become manuals. Let your victories become blueprints. Don't wait until you're flawless to be faithful to your calling. Don't wait until your story feels safe before you share it. Speak from the ashes if you must, because someone out there is standing in smoke, waiting for a voice that sounds like survival. There's a lie whispered by the culture of perfection. The lie that says, when you finally have it all together, then you can lead. But that's not how revolutions begin. They begin when one person stands up, trembling, bleeding, unfinished, and says, here's what I learned while it was breaking me. That kind of honesty changes rooms. That kind of courage breaks algorithms. Maybe the reason your story has felt so heavy is because it was never meant to stay inside you. Maybe your wounds were waiting for purpose, and maybe the version of you that still feels small is the most powerful version of all, because it's still real. Unfiltered isn't a title, it's a decision. To live loud in your truth, to stop hiding your humanity, to remember that the cracks in you are where the light gets in. The world doesn't need your polish, it needs your process. So before we begin, make a promise, not to be perfect, but to be present. To show up, not as a brand, not as a theory, but as a human. Because from this moment on, this is not a book of lessons, it's a mirror. And what you'll see inside isn't more knowledge, it's the reflection of the power you've been hiding behind your expertise. The world doesn't need another expert. It needs you. Raw, imperfect, unfiltered, alive. Welcome to Unfiltered.
Chapter 1. The Myth of the Expert. There's a dangerous belief that has quietly infected our generation. It's the idea that to make an impact, you must first become an expert. That you need the right credentials, the perfect voice, the flawless plan. That you have to be certified, approved, validated, ready. It sounds noble, but in reality, it's a prison. Because expert has become the new excuse, the word that sounds like ambition but smells like fear. The label we hide behind while we secretly whisper, I'm not qualified yet. The myth of the expert is seductive. It tells you that your story isn't worth sharing until it's polished, that your lessons don't matter until they're packaged, that your voice doesn't deserve to be heard until it's perfect. And so you wait. You wait to feel ready. You wait to feel credible. You wait to feel like one of them. But here's the truth they don't tell you. No one ever feels ready. Every expert you admire once stood where you stand, trembling, doubting, unfinished. They didn't arrive ready. They became ready by arriving. The world of experts is built on illusion. Behind every polished stage, there are sleepless nights. Behind every perfect talk, there are messy drafts. Behind every 10-step system, there's a human who broke down at step 4. But we don't see that part. We see the lights. We see the highlight reel. And we think, until I'm that good, I can't start. But the irony is that's exactly what keeps the world starving for something real. The myth of the expert creates two kinds of people, performers and witnesses. Performers hide their process. Witnesses share their truth. Performers want applause. Witnesses want impact. Performers say, "Look at me." Witnesses say, "Here's what I saw." The world is drowning in performers, but it's starving for witnesses. People who will tell the truth even when it shakes. People who speak not because they've mastered it, but because they've lived it. Listen, the myth of the expert is how mediocrity hides in plain sight. It's how great people spend their lives preparing instead of producing. You don't become valuable by knowing everything. You become valuable by saying what no one else will say because only you lived it that way. The world doesn't remember the ones who were perfect. It remembers the ones who were real. Think of the voices that changed your life. They weren't the ones who sounded like textbooks. They were the ones who sounded like truth. They spoke from scars, not scripts. They didn't perform, they revealed. They didn't teach from a mountaintop. They taught from the battlefield, dirt still on their hands. That's the power you've been underrating in yourself. Somewhere inside you is a chapter that could save someone else from drowning. But you've been editing it, waiting until it's neat. You've been mistaking healing for hiding, because you think your story has to sound perfect before it can sound powerful. But power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from ownership. You want to know the truth about experts? They're just amateurs who refuse to stay silent. They didn't have it all figured out. They just decided to stop apologizing for their becoming. So if you've been waiting for permission, this is it. You don't need to be the most qualified voice in the room. You just need to be the most honest. You don't need more credentials. You need more courage. You don't need more theory. You need more truth. The myth of the expert dies the moment you decide your story has value now. Not someday. Not when it's cleaner. Not when it's complete. Now. Because someone out there doesn't need your expertise. They need your evidence. The evidence that you're still here, still fighting, still showing up. You spent long enough trying to prove you belong. This is your permission to become. The stage was never built for the perfect. It was built for the brave. The world doesn't need another expert. It needs your honesty, your imperfection, your truth.
Chapter 2: The Age of Authenticity. For most of human history, people followed authority. If someone wore the robe, the badge, or the title, we listened. But the world has shifted. The old gods of expertise are crumbling, and a new kingdom has risen in their place. The kingdom of authenticity. You can feel it, can't you? The fatigue of fake smiles, the exhaustion of pretending. We've all scrolled past the flawless feeds and curated lives. And somewhere deep inside, something whispers, this isn't real. We're tired of perfection. We're craving presence. Tired of highlight reels. Hungry for human reels. You see, every era has its currency. Once it was power, then knowledge, then attention. But now, the highest currency of all is authenticity. Because when everything can be faked, the only thing that feels rare is what's real. Authenticity doesn't mean spilling every secret. It means showing up whole.
It means you no longer divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable. It means your voice doesn't have to sound like theirs. It means you stop editing your truth just to stay likable. We've been trained to wear masks so long, we start to confuse them for faces. But masks don't build connection, they build distance. And the more filters we apply, the less the world feels us. People can sense when something is manufactured. They can feel the difference between scripted and sincere, between I'm here to impress you and I'm here to impact you. That's why authenticity is magnetic. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Because presence is truth's loudest frequency. When you're real, people don't just hear your words, they feel them. They stop scrolling, they lean in. They recognize something familiar, not your success, their own reflection. You were never meant to be a carbon copy of the loudest voice in your niche. You were meant to sound like home to the people who need you most. And they don't need a superstar. They need a mirror. The age of authenticity is not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about return. A return to the real. To the way stories used to be told. Around fires, not filters. Through voices, not algorithms. Where the power wasn't in how perfect you sounded, but how much of your soul was in the sound. Authenticity is not a marketing strategy. It's a memory of who you were before you learned to perform. Maybe you've spent years trying to build credibility, but credibility without connection is like a bridge that leads nowhere. Connection comes when people recognize that you are human first, expert second. The new leaders of this era won't be the ones who know the most. They'll be the ones who are willing to be seen the most. Because authenticity is the new authority. So stop asking, how can I look more professional? Start asking, how can I sound more real? Because when you're real, you become relatable. And when you're relatable, you become unforgettable. The world has had enough of plastic perfection. We don't want your mask, we want your eyes. We don't want your sales pitch, we want your story. We don't want your script, we want your sincerity. There is power in standing unpolished and saying, this is who I am, still learning, still becoming. That is how movements begin. That is how trust is built. The age of authenticity has no audience, only participants. Because when you are real, people don't just watch you, they walk with you. So strip away the filters, let the edges show. Let your humanness breathe. Because real is rare. And in a world full of experts, the most powerful person is the one who dares to stay human. This is your permission to stop curating and start connecting. You are not a product, you are a presence. Don't perform. Just be. Because the future doesn't belong to the perfect, it belongs to the authentic. Welcome to the age of authenticity.
Chapter 3. The Death of Information. We are drowning in information, yet starving for meaning. Every second, new voices shout for attention. Another thread, another tutorial, another expert telling you what to do next. Knowledge has never been more available, and transformation has never been more absent. The truth is, the world doesn't suffer from a lack of knowledge. It suffers from an overdose of it. We scroll, we consume, we learn, and yet we stay the same. Because information doesn't change people. Revelation does. Knowledge fills your mind. Revelation moves your soul. One makes you aware, the other makes you awake. We've mistaken accumulation for evolution. We measure progress by how much we've consumed instead of how much we've become. And now, people have more strategies than ever, but less clarity than ever. They have more goals, but less grounding. More options, but less obedience to their own truth. You can't download transformation. You have to live it. You can't stream purpose. You have to struggle for it. You can't binge watch evolution. You have to bleed for it.
We live in an age where people would rather share wisdom than apply it, where we save quotes we never practice and repost truths we never embody. And the algorithm rewards performance, not transformation. But your soul knows the difference. It's tired of pretending to grow. It's craving something real. The death of information is not a tragedy. It's a mercy. Because when the noise dies, you can finally hear your own voice again. There comes a point where learning more becomes a disguise, a way to postpone action, a way to hide behind preparation. You call it research, but it's really fear. Fear of starting imperfectly. At some point, you must stop studying the path and start walking it, because truth is not a theory, it's a direction. The mind loves information, but the soul demands integration. Knowledge is input, wisdom is digestion. The world doesn't need more educated people, it needs embodied people. People who don't just quote ideas, but carry them. Real transformation doesn't begin when you learn something new. It begins when you finally live what you already know you must do. Because truth means nothing until it's proven through obedience. So ask yourself, what if you stopped seeking more content and started creating more contact with your truth? What if you stopped hoarding wisdom and started walking it? What if you stopped collecting information and started collecting impact? Maybe it's time to unsubscribe from everything that keeps you distracted from what you already know you must do. Maybe it's time to trade information for integration. Because the death of information is the birth of transformation. You don't need to know more to start. You just need to trust what you already know. Knowledge fills the mind. Truth fuels the movement. The world doesn't need another person who knows everything. It needs someone brave enough to live something. The death of information is not the end of learning. It's the beginning of becoming.
Chapter 4. Scars as Scripts. Every scar tells a story. Some are quiet. Some still ache when you touch them. Some have faded so much you almost forget where they came from. But none of them are meaningless. Every scar is proof that something tried to break you and failed. We spend so much of our lives hiding our wounds, convinced that healing means erasing the evidence. But healing was never meant to make you look untouched. It was meant to make you whole. Somewhere, we learn to treat pain like shame, to bury the things that broke us, as though survival was something to apologize for. But what if your scars aren't there to humiliate you? What if they're there to educate someone else? The things you've survived are not random. They're lessons written in flesh and memory, proof that you've seen the dark and found your way back. We admire strength, but we misunderstand it. Strength is not how well you hide your pain. It's how honestly you can carry it. Strength is not the absence of wounds. It's the willingness to turn them into wisdom. There are people waiting to read your life like a manual, but they can't if you keep editing out the hard parts. Your scars are not disqualifications. They're qualifications. Proof that you've been tested. Proof that you've bled for what you now believe. You don't have to stand on a stage to make impact. Sometimes the most powerful message is your quiet survival, because your endurance gives others permission to keep going. The world is full of polished storytellers, but empty of honest ones. Everyone wants to sound like victory. Few are willing to sound like process. But it's the process that teaches. It's the pain that transforms. You can't inspire from the top of the mountain if you pretend you never crawled up bleeding. People don't follow the flawless. They follow the familiar, the ones who look like them,
hurt like them, and still choose to rise. Scars are sacred things. They carry both memory and message. They remind you of the wound, but they also remind you of the healing. So instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What is this meant to teach through me?" Because pain is a poor companion, but an excellent teacher. Some of your greatest breakthroughs will come disguised as breakdowns. Some of your best material will come from your worst moments. Every healed wound becomes a script, not written in ink, but in empathy. The kind of script that can't be memorized, only lived. The people who most need your story aren't looking for a perfect ending. They're looking for proof that they can survive the middle. Don't hide your scars. Highlight them, because they prove that pain can be rewritten into power. They prove that brokenness doesn't mean finished. Your scars are your credentials. Your pain is your platform. Your story is your strength. So the next time life leaves another mark, don't rush to cover it. Let it breathe. Let it become. Let it remind you of what can't be destroyed. The world doesn't need another perfect voice. It needs the ones who've lived through the fire and are still willing to speak. Let your scars become scripts, because what once broke you might be the very story that builds someone else.
Chapter 5. Mistakes as Manuals. Everyone wants wisdom, but no one wants the classroom it comes from. And that classroom is called failure. The truth is, your greatest lessons didn't come from books or mentors. They came from the moments you got it wrong, the times you misjudged, the seasons you fell flat on your face and thought it was over. Those moments were not punishments, they were blueprints. But we live in a world allergic to mistakes, a culture that celebrates the highlight and hides the lesson. So we scroll through other people's after pictures while secretly drowning in our befores. Somewhere you started believing that mistakes disqualify you. But the opposite is true. Mistakes qualify you because they strip away illusion. They teach humility. They forge understanding. Every mistake is a manual, written in your own handwriting. Each failure is a message from your future self saying, "Here's what you must never forget." Think about it. Every person who has ever changed the world first misstepped their way into clarity. Edison burned through 1,000 wrong attempts before he found the light. Do you think he saw failure? No, he saw feedback. Failure isn't final, it's formative. It's how the universe edits your direction. It's not there to stop you, it's there to shape you. The difference between the ones who rise and the ones who remain isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the refusal to waste them. Some people collect trophies. Others collect lessons. One fades, the other multiplies. Don't be ashamed of your errors. Be ashamed only if you never extracted their wisdom. Because regret is what happens when you experience pain twice. Once when it happens, and again when you refuse to learn from it. Every mistake carries a seed. Inside that seed is instruction. But most people never plant it. They bury it in self-blame. They label it failure and move on. When in truth, that mistake was the missing page in the manual of your destiny. Sometimes what you call a detour was divine direction. Sometimes what embarrassed you was actually educating you. The people you admire didn't avoid mistakes, they converted them. They turned missteps into maps, pain into process, errors into expertise. Because the only real failure is the one you refuse to translate.
Everything else is tuition. You don't learn character from success. You learn it from confrontation with your ego, your pride, your illusions. That's where wisdom is forged. Mistakes are mirrors. They show you what still needs healing, what still needs humility, and what still needs heart. So stop hiding your wrong turns. Start harvesting them. Stop pretending you never failed. Start teaching from it. Because every error that once humiliated you is secretly holding the instruction someone else is desperate for. The most powerful leaders don't just share their wins, they share their wounds. They stand before the world and say, "Here's how I fell. Here's what it cost me. Here's what I learned. Don't make my mistake. Use it." That is how legacies are built. Not by being perfect, but by being professors of imperfection. Your mistakes are not stains. They are signatures. They mark you as someone who tried. They prove that you were in the arena, not watching from the stands. So don't erase your mistakes. Annotate them. Write the lessons in the margins of your memory, because one day someone will need to read your notes to find their way out of their own darkness. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your progression. Don't hide your errors. Publish them. Because mistakes make the best manuals, if you're humble enough to write them down.
Chapter 6. The Power of Voice. There is a moment in every life when silence becomes too heavy to carry. You feel it sitting on your chest. All the things you wanted to say but didn't. All the truths you swallowed to stay likable. All the stories you never told because you thought no one would care. But silence is not safety. It's slow suffocation. You were not created to stay quiet. You were created to create sound. Your voice is not just communication. It's contribution. Somewhere along the line, you learn to shrink your sound. Maybe someone mocked you. Maybe someone silenced you. Maybe the world made you believe that being small was safer. But safety is where purpose goes to die. There is power in your voice, not because it's perfect, but because it's personal. The tone of your truth, the rhythm of your struggle, the echo of your conviction. No one else carries that sound. Every human being vibrates on a certain frequency. And when you speak from your truth, the world rearranges itself to listen. That's not poetry, that's physics. Sound travels. So does courage. When you dare to speak, you give others permission to find their own frequency. But too many people trade their voice for approval. They talk like the crowd, think like the crowd, and then wonder why they feel invisible. You cannot be seen if you refuse to be heard. The power of your voice is not in how loud you speak, but in how true you speak. Whisper truth, and it will echo longer than shouted lies. Your voice doesn't have to change the whole world. It just has to change someone's. One person, one soul, one heart that says, "Because you spoke, I can stand." That's how revolutions begin, not with crowds, but with courage. You are the steward of a sound that only you can release. If you don't, the world loses something it will never hear again. You don't need to speak perfectly. You just need to speak honestly. Because the voice that shakes often shakes the world. Every word you hide rots into regret. Every truth you bury becomes a weight you will one day drag. You are not here to echo others. You are here to emanate yourself. There will always be people who disagree with your voice. Let them. Because the sound of your truth will irritate the ones who still live in lies. Don't be afraid to make noise. Noise is how the universe announces change. Somewhere out there, someone is waiting to hear the sentence only you can say. And until you speak it, they remain trapped in silence too.
The power of voice isn't about volume. It's about vibration. Your words carry energy. They build worlds or break them, heal hearts or harden them. Every time you speak truth, the frequency of the planet rises a little higher. Don't just talk to be heard. Speak to be felt. Speak like your voice is an instrument of healing, not a tool for attention. Speak as if your sound carries legacy, because it does. Every time you use your voice for truth, the lie loses a little more power. Your voice is not random. It's a divine assignment wrapped in sound. Don't let fear edit your message. Don't let the crowd dilute your tone. Speak the sentence only you can say, because silence doesn't save you. Expression does. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more notes. And your voice is one, distinct, resonant, necessary. So rise, open your mouth, and let your truth breathe. Because when you speak, the world remembers what real sounds like.
Chapter 7. Imperfect Greatness. Greatness has been misdefined. We were taught that it means flawless execution, unbroken streaks, the absence of error. But real greatness doesn't look like perfection. It looks like persistence. Somewhere along the way, we built a world where only the finished gets celebrated. We cheer the success, but not the struggle. We glorify the outcome, but ignore the journey that nearly broke the one who made it. And so we spend our lives performing instead of progressing. We rehearse success while suppressing the truth. We filter our failures, edit our emotions, and call it branding. But here's what greatness really is. It's getting up when your confidence has collapsed. It's creating when nobody's clapping. It's showing up when you no longer believe you matter. That's greatness. Raw, unfiltered, imperfect. Because perfection is performance, but greatness is devotion. It's what remains after applause fades, after plans crumble, after pride dies. The world has confused excellence with obsession. Excellence is the pursuit of growth. Obsession is the fear of not being enough. One builds you, the other burns you. You don't become great by getting everything right. You become great by staying faithful when everything feels wrong. Look closely at the people you admire most. None of them had clean stories. They doubted, they delayed, they broke down. But they also kept becoming. We tend to think greatness is visible, but most of it happens in private. The nights when no one's watching. The moments when quitting feels holy. Greatness lives in that whisper that says, not yet. Get up. Try again. Imperfection is not your enemy. It's your evidence. Proof that you're still alive, still learning, still becoming. There's a kind of beauty that only broken things carry. A kind of wisdom that can't be taught by success, only by struggle. The cracks in you are not signs of weakness. They're signs that the light found a way in. The pressure to be perfect is a thief. It steals creativity. It suffocates courage. It silences truth. The irony? The moment you finally allow yourself to be imperfect, you become limitless. Because people don't fall in love with your perfection. They fall in love with your humanity. Imperfect greatness means you stop trying to prove something and start trying to become something. It means you measure progress, not polish. You stop chasing validation and start choosing truth. You stop comparing your chapter 4 to someone else's chapter 40. You stop apologizing for evolving in public. Greatness doesn't hide behind the curtain until it's flawless. It steps out trembling, voice shaking, heart open. And that
is why people feel it. You are not required to be perfect to be powerful. You are not required to be flawless to be faithful. You are not required to be complete to be called. What makes you great is not that you've arrived. It's that you refuse to stop moving. Every stumble is still forward. Every crack still lets light through. Every imperfection still points toward purpose. Don't chase perfect. Chase presence. Because perfection inspires admiration, but imperfection inspires connection. And connection is what changes people. Imperfect greatness means you stop trying to prove something and start trying to become something. It means you measure progress, not polish. You stop chasing validation and start choosing truth. You stop comparing your chapter 4 to someone else's chapter 40. You stop apologizing for evolving in public. Greatness doesn't hide behind the curtain until it's flawless. It steps out trembling, voice shaking, heart open. And that is why people feel it. You are required to be perfect to be powerful. You are not required to be flawless to be faithful. You are not required to be complete to be called. What makes you great is not that you've arrived. It's that you refuse to stop moving. Every stumble is still forward. Every crack still lets light through. Every imperfection still points toward purpose. Don't chase perfect. Chase presence. Because perfection inspires admiration, but imperfection inspires connection. And connection is what changes people. Imperfect greatness means your heart keeps showing up even after your confidence stops. When you no longer need to look untouchable to feel unstoppable. So let the world have its flawless heroes. You be the real one. Bleeding, becoming, beautifully unfinished. Because that's what greatness looks like in real life.
Chapter 8, The Courage to be Seen. There are few things harder than letting yourself be seen. Not the version you curate, not the performance you polish, but the real, trembling, breathing you. The one who doubts, the one who still hurts, the one who's still figuring it out. We live in a world obsessed with visibility, but terrified of vulnerability. Everyone wants to be noticed, but no one wants to be known. Because to be seen is to be exposed. And exposure can feel like danger when you've spent a lifetime surviving by hiding. But hiding comes with a cost. The cost of your peace. The cost of your potential. The cost of never knowing how powerful your truth could have been. There's a loneliness that comes from invisibility. It's the quiet ache of knowing the world sees your mask, but not your soul. And that ache doesn't go away with success. It just gets dressed in better clothes. To be seen takes courage, because when you decide to show up raw and unfiltered, you risk being misunderstood. You risk being judged. You risk being real. But the risk of being real is the price of being free. You were not born to blend in. You were born to bear light. But light doesn't shine through walls. It shines through windows. And every time you let yourself be seen, you crack the wall a little more. Stop apologizing for your visibility. Stop waiting for the world to approve your arrival. You don't need permission to exist out loud. Your visibility isn't vanity, it's responsibility, because someone somewhere is watching you to remember what courage looks like. The people who inspire us most are never the ones who seem untouchable. They're the ones who risked being seen while they were still breaking. The courage to be seen is not about shouting louder, it's about standing truer. You may think your presence doesn't matter, but somewhere your existence is answering someone's prayer for proof. Proof that healing is possible, proof that resilience is real, proof that broken people can still build beautiful things. Don't wait until you're perfect to show up. Because if the world only saw the perfect, it would never see you. Some people will misunderstand your light. They'll call it pride, they'll call it performance. Let them. Their opinions are just echoes of their own invisibility. The real ones will recognize you. They'll feel the courage behind your trembling voice. They'll see the truth behind your eyes. They'll connect not with your confidence, but with your candor. To be seen means to stand unmasked in a world addicted to pretending. That is not weakness. That is warfare. Every time you choose honesty over image, you break the spell of perfection a little more. You can't lead people into authenticity while hiding your own humanity. The courage to be seen is the decision to stop waiting for applause and start walking in alignment. Because when you stand in your truth, you light up a path for others who have been walking in the dark. Don't shrink, don't dim, don't disguise. The world needs to see what real looks like again. Your transparency is not a threat to your power, it's the source of it. The people who fear being seen live half-lives. They breathe but don't belong. They show up but never connect. They exist but never express. So step forward. Let the light touch the parts of you you thought you had to hide. Let the world see you, not because you need validation, but because your visibility is a signal that authenticity still wins. Being seen will scare you, but staying unseen will slowly kill you. Choose courage, choose exposure, choose freedom, because your truth, seen fully, will set more than just you free.
Chapter 9. The Law of Resonance. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. That's the secret the universe has been whispering all along. Every word you speak, every belief you hold, every vibration you emit becomes a broadcast. And the world responds to that broadcast with perfect precision. You're not chasing outcomes. You're creating echoes. Resonance is when your inner world and your outer world finally agree. When the sound of your soul becomes louder than the noise of your fear. We've been taught to chase, but chasing is what you do when you don't believe you already carry the frequency of what you desire. Resonance doesn't chase, it calls. You can't fake resonance. You can say all the right affirmations, read all the right books, copy all the right strategies, but if your energy says, "I don't believe," the universe hears that louder than your words. This is why authenticity matters. Because resonance only recognizes truth. It ignores performance. It rejects pretense. It only vibrates to what's real. When you speak from truth, you vibrate at a different frequency, and people can feel it. They may not understand it logically, but something in them whispers, "This is real." The law of resonance is why you can't hide and still expect connection. People don't respond to what you present. They respond to what you project. If your outer life feels out of sync, it's not because you're unlucky. It's because your vibration is mixed. Part truth, part fear, part faith, part pretending. The universe can't echo confusion. It can only echo clarity. You attract when you align. You repel when you perform. Resonance is not magic, it's mathematics. Frequency meets frequency. That's why when you finally speak from your soul, the right people appear, the right doors open, the right energy returns. You are a walking broadcast tower. Every thought you think is a signal. Every emotion is a wave. Every word is a vibration that leaves your mouth and looks for a match. The world you see is not happening to you. It's happening through you. So the question isn't, how do I attract more? The real question is, what am I resonating with? If you vibrate fear, you'll attract chaos. If you vibrate scarcity, you'll attract struggle. If you vibrate truth, you'll attract transformation.
Resonance doesn't just change what comes to you, it changes who you become. Because as your frequency rises, your standards rise. The people you once chased no longer feel magnetic. The opportunities you once begged for no longer feel aligned. Because you've evolved beyond them. Every time you choose truth over performance, your resonance sharpens. Every time you choose vulnerability over image, your energy clears. And every time you speak from your authentic core, the world listens differently. You've felt this before. The moment you meet someone and instantly know they're real, that's resonance recognizing resonance. It's the soul saying, finally, something true. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You just need to be in tune. When you stop trying to convince and start to vibrate, the world rearranges itself around your authenticity. Because what is meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It needs to be matched. The law of resonance says this. The world doesn't respond to your image. It responds to your energy. So stop worrying about being noticed. Focus on being aligned. Because alignment is attraction. And when your soul finally sounds like itself, you won't have to search for your people. They'll hear you coming.
Chapter 10. Building with blood, not theory. There's a difference between people who know and people who have bled. One speaks from memory, the other speaks from experience. You can always tell the difference. The ones who know quote others. The ones who've bled quote themselves. You can't fake the weight of wisdom that comes from suffering. You can hear it in someone's tone. You can feel it in their presence. There's a gravity that only pain can teach. The world is full of people who can explain success, but very few who can embody it. Because information doesn't make you credible. Integrity does. We live in a generation addicted to shortcuts. Everyone wants the formula, the script, the easy path. But anything that comes without sweat will collapse without substance. Building with theory is fragile. Building with blood is forever. When you build from theory, you build from your head. When you build from blood, you build from your history. The lessons you didn't read, you survived. The truths you didn't memorize, you became. Real credibility is carved through consequence. Every scar on your journey is a signature that says, I didn't just learn this, I lived it. You can't teach resilience from a textbook. You can't describe hunger from comfort. You can't model grit from theory. You can only reveal what you've earned through endurance. There's a reason your message doesn't feel fully alive yet. You're still trying to speak before you've bled enough. Pain is the currency of authenticity. And if you've paid that price, you've earned the right to be heard. You don't inspire people by being flawless. You inspire them by showing your fingerprints on the walls you built. Theory says, here's how it should work. Blood says, here's what it costs. Theories are clean. Lives are messy. But only the messy ones move people. Because people don't connect with explanations. They connect with evidence. Theories impress the mind. Blood impresses the soul. When you build with blood, you stop trying to sound right and start trying to be real. Because truth spoken from pain hits different. It doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need approval. It carries its own authority. The reason some voices echo through generations is because they were baptized in hardship. They spoke with tears still fresh, hearts still healing, faith still forming, and yet they spoke anyway. That's what makes their words immortal. You can't fake endurance. You can't rehearse resilience. You have to earn it with blood. Whatever you're building, a business, a message, a movement, don't build it on borrowed conviction. Build it on your own story. Because borrowed conviction collapses under pressure, but lived conviction becomes your foundation. The world doesn't need more talkers. It needs more testifiers. People who don't just recite wisdom, but radiate it. When you build with blood, you no longer need to prove yourself. The work speaks. The wounds testify. The truth stands. You may not have fancy credentials, you may not have a perfect plan, but if you have pain that's been processed into purpose, you are already a lighthouse. Don't be afraid to build from your bruises. Don't be afraid to let the dirt show, because what you've lived is more powerful than anything you could ever learn. Furies fade, formulas fail, but stories built with blood, they endure. So keep building, even if your hands shake. Keep building, even if you're bleeding, because every drop you shed today will become proof tomorrow that you didn't just talk about the fire, you walked through it and came out carrying light.
Chapter 11. The Rise of the Real Ones. Every generation reaches a breaking point. A moment when people get tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of polishing. Tired of performing just to belong. That's when revolutions begin. And make no mistake, one is happening right now. The old world ran on perfection. On curated images, on carefully manufactured personalities, on flawless branding and filtered lives. But perfection is collapsing under its own weight. People are exhausted from trying to look whole while secretly falling apart. A new breed of human is emerging, the ones who no longer need to fake it. The ones who don't post highlight reels to prove their worth. The ones who tell the truth even when it costs them likes. The ones who'd rather lose followers than lose themselves. These are the real ones. Not flawless, not finished, but free. The real ones are rewriting the rules of relevance. They don't chase attention, they attract alignment. They don't market perfection, they embody presence. They don't compete, they contribute. The real ones are dangerous to systems built on deception. Because when truth walks into a room, illusions shatter. You can recognize them by their eyes. They look alive, not perfect, just present. They've made peace with their past. They no longer worship the idea of enough. They've realized that being human is. The real ones have walked through the fire of rejection and learned to dance in the ashes. They've stopped waiting for approval and started living by alignment. They're not afraid to say, I don't know. They're not afraid to say, I was wrong. They're not afraid to say, I'm still healing. Because vulnerability has become their strength. The real ones are creators, not copycats. They don't chase trends, they set the tone. They don't ask what's popular, they ask what's true. While the world scrolls, they build. While the crowd complains, they create. While others talk about authenticity, they embody it. The real ones are everywhere. In quiet corners, in small studios, behind microphones, in living rooms, in classrooms, in the mirror. You might be one of them. They don't crave fame. They crave impact. They don't want followers. They want freedom.
They know that being real will cost them comfort, but pretending would cost them themselves. The world doesn't change because of the loudest people. It changes because of the truest ones. The rise of the real ones isn't a marketing shift. It's a spiritual correction. Humanity is tired of artifice, tired of noise, tired of should. The next wave of leaders, healers, creators, and innovators will not be the most polished, but the most honest. They'll speak from scars, build from pain, and lead with empathy. They'll create without pretending, and rise without performing. This is the revolution of raw, the uprising of the unfiltered, the moment when truth stops whispering and starts roaring again. You can feel it in your bones. The world is shifting. The fake is fading. The real is rising. And if your soul's been restless lately, it's because you were never meant to stay hidden among the plastic. You were born to stand among the real ones. This isn't the end of authenticity. It's its resurrection. The era of masks is dying. The age of mirrors is beginning. So show your face. Tell your truth out loud. Because the world doesn't need another flawless expert. It needs more real ones.
Chapter 12. The Transformation Era. Something is ending. Not just an industry. Not just an ideology. A way of being. The age of expertise for performance's sake is over. The age of transformation has begun. For years, the world has been hypnotized by how things look. Perfect feeds, perfect words, perfect lives held together by anxiety and algorithms. But now, truth is pushing through the cracks. People don't want to be impressed anymore. They want to be impacted. This is the transformation era, where information bows to embodiment, and where inspiration finally meets application. In this new world, authenticity isn't a strategy, it's survival. People no longer follow those who appear strong. They follow those who are transparent enough to help them become strong. Transformation is no longer optional. If your work doesn't change lives, if your truth doesn't change you, it will vanish in the noise. The future belongs to the embodied, the ones who practice what they preach, who live the message before they post it, who are willing to fail publicly if it means growing authentically. The transformation era demands that we stop teaching theories we haven't lived, stop creating content we don't believe in, stop wearing masks we no longer need. In this new era, your credibility isn't built on credentials. It's built on consistency, not how perfect you sound, but how true you stay when no one's clapping. Transformation requires exposure. You can't evolve in hiding. The cocoon must tear before the wings can work. The old world said, look successful. The new world says, be sincere. The old world said, convince them. The new world says, connect with them. Every time you choose honesty over hype, you move the planet forward an inch. Every time you choose presence over performance, you shift the frequency of culture. The transformation era is a quiet revolution, the kind that happens inside people before it happens around them. It begins when one person stops pretending, starts healing, and decides to live out loud. Then another, until authenticity becomes contagious. This is what the future sounds like. Less noise, more truth. Fewer experts, more evidence. The transformation era is not coming. It's already here. And you, your story, your scars, your sound, are part of its arrival. The question is no longer what will you say? It's what will you embody? Because the world doesn't need another expert. It needs an example. And your life, lived loud, raw, and unfiltered, might just be the one that transforms someone else.
Chapter 13. The Proof of Transformation. The Burnt-Out Entrepreneur and the Artist Who Hid Behind Perfection. Part 1. The Burnt-Out Entrepreneur. The Empire That Almost Killed Him. He was the kind of man people envied. A picture of success. The polished posts, the booked-out speaking gigs, the brand built from nothing. He was everywhere and nowhere. Because behind every confident post was another panic attack. Behind every milestone was a meltdown. Behind every "I'm fine" was a silent scream. The empire was growing, but he was shrinking. He used to wake up inspired. Now he woke up afraid. Afraid to slow down. Afraid to lose relevance. Afraid that if he stopped, he'd disappear. His phone was never off. His smile was never real. His family stopped asking if he'd join dinner. They already knew the answer. Success had become his mask, and the mask was suffocating him. One morning, while preparing for another live session on peak performance, his body gave out. A panic attack in the mirror. Chest tight, vision spinning, the expert unable to breathe. The next few months were a blur of hospital visits, canceled plans, sleepless nights. He told everyone he was restructuring, but in truth, he was rebuilding himself. For the first time, he faced his reflection without the armor. No script, no audience, just a man and his exhaustion. He realized something terrifying. He had become a brand, but forgotten how to be a person. That realization broke him open. He began to journal, began to say no, began to cry without apologizing. Slowly, he started sharing. Not the highlight reel, but the hard truth. The first post was terrifying. I built a business that broke me. I thought success meant never slowing down. I was wrong. It went viral. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. He began teaching differently, no longer about tactics or hacks, but about humanity. His workshops weren't about scaling anymore. They were about sanity. He didn't need to sound strong. His honesty was strength. Years later, people would say his work changed their lives, but he knew what really changed them. The day he stopped performing and started confessing. His empire was smaller now, but his peace was bigger. He used to chase followers. Now he builds families. He used to teach growth. Now he teaches grace. Because somewhere in his journey from exhaustion to honesty, he discovered the secret of the new era. The world doesn't need your polish. It needs your proof. Part 2. The artist who hid behind perfection. The song that saved her. She had the kind of voice that could silence a room. Every note calculated, every lyric manicured, every performance flawless. She was an artist on paper, but a prisoner in practice. The industry loved her precision. They called her a perfectionist, a word that once sounded like a compliment, until it became a cage. She stopped hearing her own voice. Every song was filtered through fear. Will they like it? Will it chart? Will it sound like them? When her third album flopped, she didn't just lose her audience. She lost herself. For months, she stayed silent. No interviews, no music, no smile that didn't hurt. She almost quit not just music, but meaning. Until one night, sitting in the dark of her apartment, she picked up her old guitar, the one she'd had before the fame, before the perfection, and she wrote. Not for radio, not for numbers, not for anyone else, just for her. The song was raw. Her voice cracked. The production was minimal. It wasn't industry ready. It was heart ready. She posted it online with no marketing, no makeup, no plan. Just her face in the shadows and her voice in the light. By morning, it had millions of plays. People said it felt like truth. That one imperfect song became a movement. Messages flooded in. Your voice sounds like what I've been feeling. She cried reading them, because for the first time, her art wasn't performance, it was presence. She began releasing music differently, no longer chasing perfection, but channeling honesty. The world responded, not because she was flawless, but because she was free. Today, she teaches young artists what no label ever taught her, that perfection repels connection and authenticity resonates. She still sings, still cracks sometimes, still trembles. But her voice is hers again, and it's never sounded more beautiful. Because the song that saved her wasn't her most perfect one, it was her truest. Closing reflection. The mirror. Two people, two worlds, a boardroom and a studio, a suit and a microphone, both burned by the same lie, that you must be perfect to be powerful, both healed by the same truth, that you are most powerful when you are real. The entrepreneur built again, this time with blood. The artist sang again, this time with soul. And in their rawness, they didn't just rebuild careers, they rebuilt connection. That's the promise of the unfiltered life. When you dare to live your truth out loud, your story becomes someone else's survival guide. The world doesn't need another expert. It needs more witnesses, more proof, more humans willing to show what healing looks like in motion. Because that's how transformation spreads, not through lectures, but through lives that have lived the lesson. And now, it's your turn. To stop performing, to start living, to stop teaching from theory, to start building from truth, to live unfiltered.
Epilogue. The Becoming Manifesto. There comes a point in every life when information runs out and only becoming remains. When you've read all the books, followed all the experts, and you realize the only voice left to trust is your own. That's when the real journey begins. Not toward perfection, not toward applause, but toward presence, toward the truth you've been editing out of yourself for far too long. You are not what you've built. You are what survived when it broke. You are not your highlight reel. You are the hands that kept building even when the lights went out. Every mistake you made was an invitation. Every scar you carry was a syllabus. Every breakdown was a birth disguised as loss. You have nothing left to prove. You only have truth left to live. This world doesn't need more experts. It needs witnesses. People who have felt the fire and still dare to speak light. The becoming is not a destination. It's a devotion. It's waking up every morning and choosing honesty over image. Choosing peace over performance. Choosing to build with your heart when your hands still shake. The path of the real is not easy, but it's eternal, because everything fake eventually fades. But truth endures. So let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them misunderstand. You were never meant to fit into their rhythm. You were meant to set your own. The day you decide to stop hiding, the world starts healing, because your authenticity is medicine. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are not broken. You are being built. You are not too late. You are right on time for your own becoming. From this moment on, speak from the scar, not from the script. Create from the wound, not from the want. Lead from the lesson, not from the label. Because you are the proof. You are the evidence. You are the living example that truth is still stronger than performance. So walk unfiltered. Speak unfiltered. Love unfiltered. Build unfiltered. And when the noise gets loud again, return here, to this silence, to this certainty, to this sound of your own becoming. The world doesn't need another expert. It needs you, and your rawness, and your imperfection, in your truth. Because transformation doesn't start with theory. It starts with one person who finally decides to live unfiltered.